What is a vinyasa and how do you do one? In today's video, we're going to break down vinyasas, standing and seated vinyasas, where they come from, why we do them, and a whole lot more. So let's dig in. Don't forget to hit that like button if you enjoyed today's video. And please do subscribe and click that notification bell as well. You may have heard the word vinyasa in many different contexts. You may have heard of a Vinyasa Yoga class, or a vinyasa between postures, or a standing vinyasa, or do a seated vinyasa, or take this vinyasa sequence. Well, vinyasa translates to breath with movement. So the idea is a synchronization of breath with movement. That quite literally encompasses the meaning of a vinyasa. Now, every style of yoga does things differently. So I'm only going to speak of Ashtanga Yoga and its use of vinyasas. There are newer styles out there called Vinyasa Yoga, and they probably do a lot of similar things. But I can only speak from this practice. And I will say it's a beautiful practice with a lot of history and a lot of tradition. And I have some links in the description box below for you to learn more about Ashtanga Yoga, this 8-limbed yoga. It's a really wonderful practice that encompasses a lot more than just the physical movements or the asanas that we do. There's breath work, there's meditation, there's so much more. So looking at vinyasa in the Ashtanga Yoga tradition, we work with this breath with movement practice. In every movement that we do in Ashtanga, we are doing vinyasas. Yes, we are. Because every movement that you do from right side to left, or left to right, or back up to standing into samastitihi, you are taking vinyasas because you're linking a breath, an inhale, with an exhale, or an exhale with an inhale. And by doing that, you, my friend, are creating a vinyasa, a breath with movement. So that's part of the beauty of this particular practice, is that there is such a focus on the breath. That's kind of the point. This is really a breathing practice with movement built in. We also have our bandhas and our dristis, which we talk a lot more about in video 1 of the series. I'll put the link in the description box below. As we're moving along now in the practice, this concept, this word, is going to be said a lot more often. So it's really important that we gather a greater understanding of it. Yes, there is a vinyasa between every single breath and every single movement, but we also have a vinyasa sequence from standing to seated, and a vinyasa sequence from seated back to seated. What does that mean? So these are sequences of specific breaths with movement to go from, say, a downward facing dog to seated, or from finishing the standing sequence when you're in warrior posture and you're trying to take what is called a vinyasa sequence through to seated. So we're going to look at a lot of different examples of this today. Now, in standing, we really primarily finish with a vinyasa from our warrior into seated to begin the primary series. We also take a vinyasa after our back bends and so many other poses coming into seated. And a seated vinyasa is where you're literally on the floor and then you're taking this sequence of movements to get yourself back to the floor. So your next question might be, why do that? Well, that's part of this practice. And why? It's a good question. This practice really initiates a lot of heat, a lot of fire, a lot of agni in the body as we move and breathe. That heat, the engagement of the muscles and the bandhas and the way we're moving and stretching our body is so powerful for your lymphatic system and your nervous system. The reason for them is to keep that heat, that momentum built, to help keep that fire burning, but also to sort of clean the slate between sides of postures and between postures themselves. So it's an energetic component as well as that physical component. And that energetic component is just as powerful as that physical component that you can see and feel. So you might see sweat bubbling up on your skin because you're getting hot and you're working hard and your heart's beating fast, but you're also creating a lot of energy. And that energy is working on a different spectrum. We live in this physical space, but also this energetic one. And there is Well, samskara. There's energy there, and we want to cleanse it just as much as we want to wash our face and brush our teeth and take a shower. And by doing these postures, doing this practice, you are, well, washing yourself from the inside out, as well as the outside in. And it's so cool, and it's so awesome to experience. So as we work with these vinyasas, know that they are not just there to wear you out, because they will. They're exhausting, especially in the beginning. They're not only here to help you build stamina and strength and endurance, but they're also here to wash you from the inside out. And they're here to clean the slate from side to side, so your body starts to learn a rhythm and a flow and a pattern, a dance of vinyasa. The body starts to really learn this practice, so eventually it becomes a learned practice, as opposed to something that you're just practicing. It's different. And the body knows it's different, and that's where we're trying to go. So, with all of that in mind, for my newer students, really the prescription for this practice is when we get to seated postures, we take a vinyasa between every side of every posture after the first few poses. But if you're new and you feel really, really fatigued, then maybe you take a vinyasa after both sides. So you're eliminating one vinyasa per set of postures in the seated sequence. That's perfectly okay. And we're going to look at other variations for vinyasa, so you could still kind of do a vinyasa even in a modified fashion, which is still maintaining that energetic connection or washing from the inside out. And there's lots of fun ways that you can approach this practice regardless of where you are right now. And I mean this with vinyasas too, because if I can do vinyasas, I promise you can too. Today we are looking at vinyasas. We've already talked a little bit about what they are, what they mean. When we go deeper into this concept of seated vinyasas and we look at jump throughs and jump backs and then different drills for gaining strength to create jump throughs and jump backs in your body, keep in mind it's still about the basic concept of vinyasa, which just means breathe and move, create breath with movement. In yoga, one thing that I find so powerful is that really and truly the connection between the body and the mind is the breath. The breath is everything. So when you're doing physical movements or creating shapes on your mat, it's not about the shapes you're creating. It's about the way you're breathing as you attempt to get into, exist in, and exit those shapes. It's about learning this connection to create the relationship with self that we seek. So breathing with movement is the absolute fundamental basis behind Ashtanga Yoga and behind the concept of a seated vinyasa or a standing to seated vinyasa or a jump through or a jump back. We're about to have a lot of fun with a bunch of different drills, starting with standing vinyasa through to seated. We're going to look at 3 variations. Inhale, raise your arms, palms touch. Exhale, fold forward, tuck your chin to your shins. Inhale, lengthen your spine, keep your gaze forward, and then step back to high plank, drop to your knees, and then lower down into chaturanga. Relax your toes. Inhale, press into up dog. Exhale, push back into down dog. Then look forward and slowly walk your feet to your hands and have a seat on the floor. In variation number 2, raise your arms on your inhale. Exhale to fold forward. Inhale, look forward, lengthen your spine. This time we're going to jump straight back into high plank and then lower down into chaturanga. Inhale to upward facing dog and exhale to down dog. This time you're going to look forward and hop your feet to your hands and then have a seat on the floor. In our 3rd variation, it's the full expression of the posture. Inhale, raise your arms, palms touch. Exhale, fold forward, tuck your chin. Inhale, lengthen your spine, look forward. Exhale, jump all the way down into chaturanga. Inhale to upward facing dog. Exhale to downward facing dog. And then jump your feet all the way through to seated with straight legs. Great job. Now let's look at the variations a little more in depth. Variation 1, again, we're going to do the same thing of just looking forward and walking the feet to the hands and having a seat on the floor. Variation 2, which we saw already, from down dog, you're going to look forward and then gently hop your feet to the floor and have a seat, sit down. Variation number 3, a little more advanced. Looking forward, hop your feet with legs crossed and then stretch them straight out in front of you. With modification 4, look through, jump your legs through, slightly crossed, and then straighten them. And the 5th and full expression of this movement is to look forward and jump through with straight legs and sit down. Now let's explore a couple drills. Drill 1, from down dog looking forward, you can work to jump your hips up into the air and back down. This teaches you how to stack your hips. In our second drill from down dog, we just bend our body back low, squatting your hips down low, keeping your eyes forward, keeping your hands flat. You're focusing on really pushing your hands down and forward to turn on all the muscles in your arms. And then you're gonna work to jump through and sit down. Practice, practice, practice. Now let's explore the hands a little bit more. You wanna make sure you keep your hands wide, fingers stretched out, and really push down and forward into the floor with your hand. This turns on the muscles in your arm. If you keep your fingers together, your arm is more flaccid, but with your hands spread out wide, you really activate all of those arm muscles. So from down dog, looking forward, keeping your eyes forward, keeping your gaze and your chin forward, focusing on pushing down and forward into those hands with your knees bent, you're in a very low squat position. Keeping the gaze forward, try to start to jump through to seated, and it's okay if you cross your legs to do so. Great job. Now let's begin our exploration of seated vinyasas. Modification 1, cross your legs, roll forward onto your hands and your knees, and step back into high plank. Then drop to your knees and slowly lower down. Inhale, push into up dog. Exhale, press back into down dog. And again, with this modification, just walk your feet to your hands and have a seat. That is modification 1 for a full vinyasa. For modification 2, cross your legs and then kind of press off of your feet to step back. It's training your core. When you lower down, keep your plank strong. Inhale to up dog. Exhale to down dog. And looking forward, hop those feet to the floor and have a seat. Now let's explore a drill to really help us get strength in our psoas and our core. Bend your knees and pull your knees into your chest with your legs stretched out. It's a really good exercise for strengthening your core. Pull your legs into your chest with your legs crossed and your feet pointed. Focus here on staying in this position to turn on all the muscles in your core and help you stabilize your body. Keep your chin lifted and your chest up. And as much as you want to, extend the legs out and then pull them back in. And when you've had enough, step your feet back and lower down into chaturanga. Inhale into upward facing dog. Exhale, press back into down dog. Then looking forward, bend your knees and jump your feet through to seated. A little more advanced, crossing your legs, lift yourself up and let your toes touch the floor to help you kick off and jump back into chaturanga. It's an excellent modification as you work yourself all the way through to the full expression of jump backs and jump throughs. A little more advanced, crossing your legs, lift up, and just a tiny kickoff on the floor to jump back. Every time you practice, you get better, you get stronger, and eventually you'll be able to pick yourself up and jump yourself back without your toes touching the floor at all. It just takes practice, 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 and you're doing a great job. Our next drill, we're gonna sit up tall with our legs straight, and you're gonna lift one of your legs in the air. Take it down, then lift the other one. It's important you keep your back flat and sit up tall. As you're lifting one leg and then the other, make sure you're not leaning backwards. You do not want to do that. Sit up straight. Pick up one leg. You're gonna feel this in your core and in your psoas and quadricep. Take a few breaths with each leg lifted, and then you're gonna lower it down and switch sides. And this is gonna build up your body strength and control. To take this a little bit further, cross your legs and then stretch them out in front of you. Still working those same muscles, keeping your back flat. You're just straightening your legs and then crossing your legs, pulling the knees to the chest, and straightening the legs and crossing the legs, pulling the knees to the chest. Do this over and over again, working to really train your body and train those muscles. Now that we've explored several different variations for both seated vinyasa back to seated and standing vinyasa to seated, and looked at vinyasas as a whole, I'm curious to know, what do you think your biggest struggle is going to be as you start exploring vinyasas? And if you are already, what's your biggest struggle? For me personally, when I was first learning this, jumping through actually came faster than jumping back. And as a teacher for over 20 years, I find that certain body types or certain strength levels or flexibility endurance levels, they have their own sets of challenges. Some people find it much easier to jump back than to jump through, and some people just really struggle with both. Guess what? If you have not been doing body work exercises and have a great control and awareness of your body for many years, then you're going to come into these particular movements or sequences feeling like you're struggling a little bit, because it requires a buildup of a lot of strength, endurance, flexibility, balance, stamina, a lot of things that you have to build up through the work that you do with your sun salutations and your standing postures. And once we get to seated, that's the time that it's appropriate to start to really explore this. But remember, it's only one tiny piece and part of the practice that you do every day. So I preface that because as you go further into seated, you don't want to burn all of your energy out doing the first 2 or 3 vinyasas in the practice, because once you're doing full primary series, you got a whole lot of vinyasas to do. So even here and even now, let everything be a stepping stone. You're building upon the strength with which you've gained the weeks before. You're adding new tools to your toolbox. You're exploring your breath and your body, working with these new tools, and be patient with the process, because you have to give your body time, not only to get strong, but to really assimilate. So do keep that in mind. At this point in your practice, it's time for us to have a proper conversation about Mysore rugs. What are they? Do you need them? When do you need them? Why do you use them? With Mysore rugs or yoga towels, both are easily acceptable in this situation. They're here to help absorb the sweat from your body. You may go through phases where you have a lot more sweat during practice versus other periods of time when you don't. That's pretty normal. But you will always face a period in your yoga journey where you do sweat a bit more, specifically your hands and your feet. And that's really the point and the purpose of Mysore rugs. They help to absorb the sweat from our body so we're not sliding around our yoga mat. That creates a whole other set of distractions. So if you're in a place now with your practice where you're like, man, I'm sweating a lot, I'm using towels, think about investing in a Mysore rug, because this will take some of that distraction away. Now, the other alternative to a Mysore rug is a yoga towel. I personally don't love yoga towels because I find they do slide around my mat. So then I'm distracted, not by the sweat that I'm slipping everywhere, but because I constantly have to fix my yoga towel. With a Mysore rug, it's a thicker material. It's also 100% natural. So all the dyes that you see in this rug are vegetable dyes. I am very, very much proponent for Mysore rugs. I create them and get them shipped from India. And this is an example of one of Nissa's Mysore rugs. It's thick, but we also have thinner material available. Every single Mysore rug will always have embroidery on the edges to make sure that it doesn't fray at the ends over time, giving more durability to your rug. And this particular rug has our Nissa symbol, and this color that you see is a jacquard color, but it's available in many different colors, and again, in a different thickness as well. This is my preference, and with Mysore rugs, it's easy to absorb the sweat. They stay in place, so I'm not fidgeting around on my mat all practice to keep my rug in place, and I'm not sliding around on my yoga mat because of the sweat coming from my body. So I find this to be a wonderful addition to my wholeness tools for my yoga practice. If you are currently experiencing slippage from your yoga practice and the sweat that you're building, that heat, that fire, that Agni, congratulations. But it's time for you to add in a Mysore rug or a yoga towel, as I said. But if you like these Mysore rugs and you want to give them a go, just hop over to olotita.com and you can grab yours there. Thank you so much for spending time with me today. I hope you find benefit in the work that you're doing on your mat for yourself, with yourself, and I hope these videos help you in the process. Don't ever stop in your quest for wholeness. I'm proud of you. I'll see you next time. Namaste.